Bob France is my guest host this morning, the voice of reason in sweet Cleveland on the lake. I hope we're still celebrating when Bob talks to you. I don't know when I'm taping this, but thank you, Bob. Take it away.
Oh, my goodness gracious. I wish we were celebrating too, Hugh Hewitt, but no. The Indian season, and yes, Hugh and I love Hugh Hewitt. I had him on the show promoting the Battleground thing on my local show in Cleveland earlier this week, and I was telling all of my audience about my deep respect for his knowledge. I call him the professor. First of all, he is a con law professor, but honestly, every time he's on the air, I feel like we're getting a lesson. We're being taught things we didn't know. He knows so much more than almost anybody I know, and I will say this, he and I don't agree on everything. He is willing to go to the cancel culture name of Guardians and roll with it, probably because he's more mature than I am. And I'm not. And I'm going to acknowledge I don't like it, and I won't go along with it. They're the Indians. They will always be the Indians. They will be the Chief Wahoo Warriors until the day that I die. Having said that, the season is over. And the Yankees, of course, played last. I don't even know who won because I just don't follow it unless the Indians are a part of it. But the Yankees and Astros are now, of course, in the American League Championship Series. I don't know how that played out, but welcome and good morning to everyone from the Hugh Hewitt Show. I am pleased to be here in the ReliefFactor.com studios. I have one wish, and that is not that I don't have my Saturday program on the Battleground Talkers Tour here in Cleveland with Hugh and with Brandon Tatum and with Eric Metaxas and with U.S. Civil Rights Commissioner Peter Kirsanow on our stage. I love that. But the one wish I really have that is never going to come true is that I could be in Pittsburgh with Hugh last night. I wanted to hear Hugh Hewitt talking to the Steelers fans face to face that he insults every time he mentions anything having to do with Steelers fans. I wish I could have seen that reception. I know I've got family in Western Pennsylvania. My mother and father were born in Western Pennsylvania. Steelers fans all throughout my family. But I know they also are conservative-minded people too. And I know they will set aside the fun of Steelers-Browns rivalry stuff for supporting conservative ideals and principles and the things that are so important to us as we approach the midterm election. So there you go. There's the introduction. There's the little fun with Hugh. I always like to say this. Hugh Hewitt and I are always in the same boat, and we are always rowing in the same direction, even if every stroke is not always in unison. For example, Indians/Guardians. For example, his friendship with and his support for, in a personal way, Congressman Tim Ryan, who of course is running against J.D. Vance in the Senate. He won't savage Tim Ryan. I will. Probably not on this show, just out of respect, but I will because I've watched both of the debates here in the state of Ohio between J.D. Vance and Tim Ryan. And Tim Ryan just did some despicable, horrific things, essentially calling a man who's married to an Indian American from India, not Native American, but from India, an Indian American woman with three biracial children, to call him a racist because he believes in a secure border was just so beyond the pale in the last debate, which happened on Monday. And he essentially linked him to the shootings in Buffalo, the horrific grocery store shootings, racially motivated, in Buffalo, New York from a couple of months back. He basically blamed J.D. Vance for that because J.D. Vance wants a secure border. And if you want a secure border, you are a believer in the Great Replacement theory, and you are a fearmonger because of the Great Replacement theory. And that's what that shooter in Buffalo cited before he went and started shooting up a black area grocery store. So therefore, it's J.D. Vance's fault. I mean, that kind of stuff just doesn't fly with me. I'm a huge supporter of J.D. Vance, and in fact, I'm going to talk to him on my local program today, and I'm going to get his thoughts on that. But so Hugh and I will take Tim Ryan apart. I don't expect you to. They come from the same neighborhood. They come from the same place, and I get it. But I promise you, Hugh and I and everybody that's been on, Ed Morrissey and Morgan Ortegas and Kurt Schlichter, and we are all doing everything we can to get as many Republicans as elected as humanly possible on November 8th. Gubernatorial races, Senate races, congressional seats. It is just so important. I'm going to say, so I gave a speech last night to a conservative group here in Cleveland. And I said to them, this isn't just about gains or losses when it comes to this particular election cycle. This is survival, okay? This is literal American survival. There has been a movement afoot, not breaking any new ground here. I'm not telling you things you don't already know. But the movement has been to destroy the United States as it exists and to replace it with something that is nefarious, that is evil. I pick your word here. And this is, of course, from their own lips. Barack Obama, when he was in office, declared that they were going to fundamentally transform America. You don't fundamentally transform something you love. You strengthen it. You support it. You don't tear it down. You don't change it into something else. They're trying to change it into something else. And in the last 21 months, this is what I said to the group last night. The last 21 months, there has been more damage done to the foundational building blocks of America, the constitutional foundation, than I think could be done in 20 years, or I would have thought could have been done in 20 years. In 21 months, look at where inflation is. Look at where the economy is. We're in a literal recession with 2 consecutive quarters of negative GDP growth. Look at the southern border. Look at the violent crime rates in America's cities all across the country from one end to the other. Look at where we are in our schools with indoctrination and, the genderqueer theory being pushed by the teachers' unions and pushed through administrators and teachers right to the kids, parents being left out of the equation. All of these things, all of the damage that has been done to this country in just 21 months, now try to imagine it if you give them 48 months. Give them 48 months of unchecked power, Democrat in the White House, Democrat-controlled House and Senate. The nation wouldn't survive. You understand? That's not to say that it would, fall into a giant sinkhole in 2024. But if we give them 2 more years of unchecked power, more damage will be done. That it doesn't matter if we elect a Republican president in 2024. And then we have more of a Republican legislature. It will be too late. The damage that will be done is unimaginable. The country will never, we won't know this country as it exists or existed before the Biden years started. We will never know those years again. We will never know that type of country again. And I mean that very sincerely. I spoke, like I said, to a great conservative organization in the suburban Cleveland area last night. Actually, we were in Cleveland proper. But and we talked about this in some depth, much more than I'll get into here. But that's how important this is. We're talking about a nation's survival, as you know it. It's not just about, well, that's okay. We can hold fast for a little while. We didn't win this one, but we'll win the next time around. It'll be far too late the next time around. The radical ideas of the American left, the radical ideas are almost impossible for us to comprehend. Let me give you an example. There's an election for governor that's going on. It's a rematch in the state of Georgia between Brian Kemp, the governor there, and Stacy Abrams, the Democrat challenger. We've seen this movie before because it was fought 4 years ago. And, Stacy Abrams continues to this day to be an election denier, which apparently, according to the American left, is the worst thing that you can be. You can't elect the election deniers. You can't allow election deniers to be serving in our republic. Actually, they don't think we have a republic. They think it's a democracy. But she's one of the strongest, loudest, most vocal election deniers that there are. But anyway, she's taken another bite at the apple. And this time, she says she's going to win, in spite of racist, voter ID policies, racist voter suppression policies, and so forth in the state of Georgia. And so she's trying really, really hard to say that I was screwed out of my chance last time. You have to right that wrong this time. Except that the people of Georgia aren't listening. She's trailing Kemp by big numbers in all of the polls. So she needs to try something extreme. She needs to try something extreme. And what is that extreme thing going to be? Well, I've got audio for you coming up as we continue this morning. It's coming up right after this break. It'll blow your mind. The radical ideas of the American left are just beyond comprehension. But I'll play those for you. We've got a lot of things to talk about this morning on the Hugh Hewitt Show. My name is Bob France. Phone numbers 800-520-1234. I would love to hear from you this morning. live in the ReliefFactor.com studios here in Cleveland, Ohio. Good morning, America. We'll be right back.
Portions of the Hugh Hewitt Show are brought to you in part by Dr. Marty's Nature's Blend.
All right, good morning to you, America. My name is Bob France, sitting in for Hugh this morning here in Cleveland, Ohio, the ReliefFactor.com studios of AM 1420 The Answer. That's my home base. If you're ever interested in hearing what I do on a local basis here, you can find me at WHKRadio.com, WHKRadio.com. So Hugh has been raising the flag all month, as you know, for our friends and heroes. I think they're heroes. I do. At Alliance Defending Freedom. This is America's largest Christian legal defense organization, the folks who have already won 14 cases before the U.S. Supreme Court, including the one on behalf of Jack Phillips, Masterpiece Cake Shop, the guy from Denver who the state of Colorado tried to force to make the same-sex wedding cake in violation of his religious beliefs. And it's only gotten worse from there, as you know. But ADF is fighting, and they are urgently active with their academic freedom project on college campuses as well, operating a Center for Life, focusing on the new realities now that Roe versus Wade has been overturned and sent back to the 50 states. Denise Harley is ADF's director at the Center for Life, and she's excited to help promote alternatives to abortion.
Oh, we have these fantastic resources. We have nonprofits, thousands of them around the nation. And so I'm really excited that we'll have the opportunity, hopefully, to divert funds away from places like Planned Parenthood that are profiting off of the destruction of human life and into more resources for these moms.
Alliance Defending Freedom, this is what makes them heroes. They never charge a dime to the clients that they represent, but that's because their legal costs are defrayed by generous tax-deductible donations from listeners like you. Call the new phone number to help. It's 855-374-4123. That's 855-374-4123. Or go to HughHewitt.com. Just click on the Alliance Defending Freedom banner. Your first gift to Alliance Defending Freedom will be matched 100% by a generous friend of ADF. So whatever you can donate will be instantly doubled. So we're in the final days of this important campaign. Do not let pro-life women down. Step up today to help ADF help you. It's extraordinarily important. All right, friends, 24 minutes past the hour. I teased it, and now I want to deliver on it. Stacy Abrams is the wannabe governor of Georgia. She was defeated the first time, and now she's coming back, and she's trying more radical things to get attention, even though her chances this time seem to be less than the first time, according to the polls in Georgia. So she needs attention. How can I get attention? Well, I would suggest to her and anybody else with an ounce of common sense and a functioning cerebral cortex, this isn't the kind of attention you want. When you try to conflate the inflation problem facing this country with the desire to kill babies that exists in the American left, the codify Roe anytime, anywhere, for any reason, without apology, abortion track that the left and the Democrat Party is on now. This is one of the most radical things that I think you'll ever hear. Stacey Abrams says that the solution to Americans' inflation problems and the fact that their wallets are shrinking and that their budgets are tighter each and every month is just to kill your babies. That's what Stacey Abrams' belief is now. Let's hear cut 15.
But let's be clear. Having children is why you're worried about your price for gas. It's why you're concerned about how much food costs. For women, this is not a reductive issue. You can't divorce being forced to carry an unwanted pregnancy from the economic realities of having a child. And so it's important for us to have both and conversations. We don't have the luxury of reducing it or separating them out, but we also have to talk about what a governor can do. A governor can address housing prices. A governor can address the cost of education. A governor can put money into the pockets of everyday hardworking Georgians instead of giving tax cuts to the wealthy. That's what I talk about on the trail, and that's what's resonating. But let's not pretend that women, half the population, especially those of childbearing age, they understand that having a child is absolutely an economic issue. It is only politicians who see it as simply another cultural conversation. It is a real biological and economic imperative conversation that women need to have.
Don't worry, Stace. You had us at kill your babies in order to cut your budget. You had us there, okay? The rest of it is just noise. You had us at kill your babies to fix your monthly budget in an era of inflation. We have so much more to say about this, and I'm looking forward to hearing what you have to say about that as well. 800-520-1234 is the number to join us. My name is Bob France, sitting in for Hugh Hewitt on the Hugh Hewitt program.
Portions of the Hugh Hewitt Show are brought to you in part by Job Creators Network.
33 minutes past the hour. Good morning to you. Welcome to the Hugh Hewitt Show. My name is Bob France, sitting in for Hugh in Cleveland, Ohio, in the ReliefFactor.com studios. But we're looking down south at the state of Georgia. And we're looking and we're listening to some of the most radical things that I think can even be imagined. Now, look, we all know that Bidenflation is crushing Americans' budgets. A middle-class America is suffering because of Biden's economic policies, energy policies leading to, $3.85 a gallon gas, which is the national average. We all know that Americans' groceries are 13.5% to 15.5% higher. Clothing, you probably couldn't even put new shoes on your kids before they went to school this year. Last month when they went back because of Biden's policies, the inflation is a true issue, and Americans have to figure out how to deal with it. What are they cutting back on? Cutting back on entertainment, cutting back on golfing, cutting back on family vacations, cutting back on movie night, cutting back on maybe the nicer or the more appealing food, if you will, in the grocery cart each Saturday because you have to buy the bargain stuff. Maybe you have to go to a different store, the lower price discount stores. Everybody has to find a way to deal with inflation. And that's just the reality of the situation. The best way to deal with inflation, of course, is to vote out the party and the people who brought it to you. And if you think we're kidding, when the Trump administration was running things, we had an inflation rate of 1.3%. When Biden took over, it rose as high as 9.3%. And that's just the consumer price index. Like I said, if you break down the metrics, it is far worse than that. And of course, now it's sitting at around 8.5%. So inflation is a reality. We ought to find a way to deal with it. What's amazing as I look south to Georgia is that the woman who wants to be governor of Georgia, her answer of things to cut out in order to deal with your inflated prices of your budget is your babies. Like literally abort your babies. If you're pregnant, you shouldn't expect the government to get out of the way of the free market and allow American businesses to run efficiently and thus manufacturers and retailers to lower their prices back down again. No. You shouldn't expect the government to help you in that way. Accept the higher prices and just cut your own expenses by aborting your babies. You got a baby on the way? No, that's not anybody else's problem but yours. Get rid of your baby. That's what Stacy Abrams said yesterday. We just played the clip. That's what Stacy Abrams believes, is just go ahead and this is the best way to counter inflation, abort your baby. Now, I of course want your thoughts on that at 800-520-1234, and we'll go right to the phones, but I want you to consider if Democrats believe in that strategy, that the best way to cut your expenses is to kill your preborn children. It doesn't matter if you're in the third trimester. Remember, we went from safe, legal, and rare to any time for any reason without apology. At any time in the gestational period. Look, all I'm doing is practicing good health care for myself and good, economic planning for my family. Go ahead and do it. If you believe that that's a realistic approach to just go ahead and kill the child that you were planning for, or maybe the child that you weren't planning for, and you just realize I don't want to take on that expense. I mean, my goodness, it kind of makes you ask, where does that stop? Where does that mindset stop? I can't afford more kids, so let's kill the kids before they're born. At what point do radical leftists say, the one that was just born? I mean, are we really that attached yet? I mean, seriously. And do you know how much it's costing me to feed that mouth? Maybe there's a next step that can be taken. Now, if that sounds radical, it is. If that sounds insane, it is. But that's the purpose. That's why I brought it up. Because that is exactly the same thing if you have a preborn child. Saying that the family budget is pinched a little too tight, let's take away that soon-to-be mouth to feed. How is it any more radical than saying let's take away the existing mouth to feed? I mean, where does it stop? At what point does the disrespect for life actually... Look, there's nothing magical. I think a lot of people have talked about this, and I'm not going to spend this whole show on the abortion issue, but I'm just so blown away by what Stacy Abrams had to say. A lot of people have used this vernacular, and I want to use it too. There's nothing magical about the birth canal. Okay? There's nothing magical. The baby that's on one side of the birth canal is the same as the baby on the other side of the birth canal. One passing through from one side to the other does not magically transform into a human being when it gets to the other side. If it's a human being on one side of the birth canal, the outside, it's a human being on the inside of it. There is nothing there's no sorcery, there's no mystical thing that happens. This is not a human to a human. Not worth protecting to protecting. Allowed to dismember? Not allowed to dismember when it gets in the other side of the birth canal. Does anybody really believe? Does Stacy Abrams understand that? Because she is saying, as long as it's on the correct side of the birth canal, here's how you deal with inflation. You don't ask Joe Biden to change his energy policies. You don't ask Joe Biden to change his trade policies. You don't ask Joe Biden to change his entire economic policy of spend more money that doesn't have any backing, creating more inflation. No. You just say, I got this. I'll just eliminate the mouths that I have to feed. Suddenly, my inflation problem goes away. It sounds radical because it is radical. It sounds extreme because it is extreme, and it sounds evil because it is evil. All right, 800-520-1234. I would love to hear from people in Georgia. If you are listening to the Hugh Hewitt Show in Georgia, I would like your reactions to what your Democrat candidate for governor, Stacy Abrams, the election denier, had to say about this. You know who didn't want to hear anything that Stacy Abrams had to say because she didn't have to defend it? Karine Jean-Pierre, the press secretary. She was asked about this yesterday. Karine Jean-Pierre could not run fast enough from this question. Let's hear cut 16.
In Georgia, the president's endorsed candidate for governor, Stacy Abrams, is suggesting that one way to mitigate the effects of inflation is to get an abortion. Does President Biden agree?
I did not see her comments on this, so I don't know the context of this. Again, I want to be careful because this is a political debate, and it's related to a midterm, an election. I'm not going to comment on that.
So you're not going to comment on things that are related to the midterm elections? May I ask an obvious question here? Why are you there? Why are you at the podium? Because almost everything the president talks about these days has to do with the midterm election. You're there to be the president's spokesperson, to clarify his remarks, to clean up his messes. How can you not comment on it? Just asking. Because Karine Jean-Pierre is really, really in a tough fight. She's in a tough fight for the title of dumbest human being working in the federal government. She proves it every single day. This is what happens when you have a diversity hire, when you pledge to hire somebody based on their sexual orientation and or their skin color, and in her case, both. This is what you get. So she's not going to comment on that because it has to do with the midterm elections. Okay. I want to go to Brian, calling us from Pennsylvania. Wants to talk about Stacy Abrams. Welcome to the Hugh Hewitt Show, Brian. Go right ahead.
Hey, how you doing? Yeah, I heard you talking before about this lady. Listen, I mean, we're living in a day and age where the evil is running so rampant. And the people that need to stand up are staying quiet. And it's time we wake up. We confuse people in any manner. I mean, our forefathers, just think about it. Our forefathers got to be rolling around in their graves. They got to be. These guys used to stand up before Congress. They used to sit down and pray before every meeting. They went home, loved their family, went to work, did the right things. Now you got this radical left with all these immigrants coming from Texas to New York, and I'm right outside of New York. They got these temporary shelters built for these people, illegal people, coming in this country. They have cell phones, cable TV, beds, heat, AC, and you have our veterans on the streets starving and committing suicide. And you got this radical left with this agenda. It's got to stop, brother. It's got to stop.
Yeah, well, you know what? The first step toward making it stop is electing the right people. You're in Pennsylvania. Do you think John Fetterman has a chance of winning that Senate seat?
You know what? I tell you what, the evil is so bad. Yeah, anything's possible. I mean, where I live, I mean, we're all Trump supporters, and a lot of us, listen, Trump's not the best guy on the planet, but he cares a hell of a lot more about America than this radical left agenda. So,
well, that's because the radical left has made it their mission, and they've made this very, very clear. They've said it out loud, is to change America, to literally destroy America based on what it is, and to create something that they find more desirable, like a Marxist society, okay? Socialist to be at the very least. So you're right. Trump cares. I think everybody on the Republican side cares. There are some on the Democrat side who care, some. But they have to stand up against the radicals who are trying to destroy this country. I got more on Fetterman coming up next as well. Bob France sitting in for Hugh Hewitt. Good morning, America.
Don't go anywhere. Bob France will be right back. I want to remind you, the jobcreatorsnetwork.com, jobcreatorsnetwork.com. You want to join them because the Chamber of Commerce has utterly collapsed in the United States. So if you're a small business person and you need them to unregulate your world, they need them to stop spending money on unemployed people so that they will come back to work and work for you at a reasonable wage, but work a good 40 to 60 hours a week. ReliefFactor.com will ease their aches and pains, but what you really need is the Job Creators Network to get them to come to work and relieve you a different sort of way. Get some workers out. That's what JobCreatorsNetwork.com does. Represent small businesses who are dying, death by 1,000 cuts, and those 1,000 cuts are employees who don't show up or show up late because the world has changed and Democrats run Congress. JobCreatorsNetwork.com, coming to a city near you very, very soon. Don't forget them. Also, don't forget to buy your gold from HughGold.com. That's HughGold.com, which is, of course, Birch Gold. They're a depository for people who want to hold physical gold away from their house. They might want to do a SEP IRA. You might want to do a 401k. Let the value of your gold there grow exponentially over the years as it compounds, as it goes up and up and up. But if you just want to own gold, buy gold and put into a depository away from your home, they'll do that for you as well. You got to get in touch with them first. Go to HughGold.com or text my name, Hugh, H-U-G-H, to 989898. 3 sponsors, 3 recollections for Bob Franz. There will be a test after the break if Bob remembers. ReliefFactor.com, JobCreatorsNetwork.com, and of course, Birch Gold via HughGold.com. Finally, don't let anyone forget, ReliefFactor.com. I did bring it with me on this tour. This tour is a lot of airports and a lot of days, and I will be back inside the Beltway on Monday. But until then, I threw my ReliefFactor.com in my backpack and brought it along with me. And remember, every morning, before I leave the hotel room, get my ReliefFactor.com. Be ready for anything that comes along. And when you're doing Denver and Philadelphia and Atlanta and you're heading off to Columbus and Cleveland and Pittsburgh and who else knows where, it changes by the day. You need your ReliefFactor.com. ReliefFactor.com is a great sponsor of our show, and it is traveling with me as we go from east to west and back again. I began on Monday heading all the way out to the Rocky Mountains. Relief Factor goes wherever I go because my greatest mortal enemy to the rotator cuff is the overhead bin. So I take my ReliefFactor.com, and I always take it before I fly. I usually take it in the first hour of the show, but when I'm on the road, I got to remember to put it in the dock kit and make sure I take it when I shave. ReliefFactor.com, ReliefFactor.com. Don't leave home without it. Bob will be right back. Stay tuned.
The Hugh Hewitt Show is now available on TV. Go to SalemNewsChannel.com or download the app. You can also watch on Roku and Fire Stick. Salem News Channel, the antidote to the mainstream media.
Welcome back, America, to the Hugh Hewitt Show. Once again, my name is Bob France, coming to you live in Cleveland, Ohio, sitting in for Hugh today in the ReliefFactor.com studios as Hugh embarks upon the Battleground Talkers Tour. He'll be in Cleveland with me on Saturday, so honored to be able to sit in for him today. Joined now by Dr. Michael Oren, as you are joined each and every Thursday. The former Israeli Deputy Prime Minister for Diplomacy, easy for me to say, and also former Israeli ambassador to the United States. Dr. Oren, good morning. How are you?
I'm great, Bob. How are you?
Doing well. Thank you very much, sir, and I appreciate you coming on. So, Dr. Oren, I want to talk about Israeli security for just a moment, if I can, because I know that people in Israel are worried about Iranian drones being used by Putin in Kyiv. We know, the attacks that they're using. What is the likelihood of Israel being targeted by Iranian drones?
About 100%.
Okay.
About 100%. The Iranians are doing this not to help the Russians. They're developing these drones to attack us. This is just, a sideline for them, and probably a way of making money and financing the project. But they're designed to, end run the Iron Dome system, which takes out a standoff missile, a missile that goes up in the air and comes down. We also have a system known as David Sling that was developed with the United States that can intercept a cruise missile. Very sophisticated technology. Cruise missile can be guided by a joystick. A drone is a completely different level of threat. A drone can hide behind a tree. A drone can hide behind a fire hydrant and come at you any different way. So it's very, very difficult to intercept. The best method we have that we're developing is a laser.
Okay, you just beat me to the answer before I asked the question. What can you do then? Because you're right about the about the abilities and the tactical abilities for these things to hide and to strike in various areas that the Iron Dome cannot protect. So tell me about the lasers.
Well, the lasers are in an advanced state of development. The rumor is that they'll be operational in about 2 years. We're in a race here to get them operational, and that will affect certainly Iran's timetable as well. But a laser can cover huge swaths of the sky and pick out a drone attack within fractions of a second and eliminate it using concentrated energy. There's also a economic factor here, financial factor. David Sling, each rocket costs $1 million. For Iron Dome, each interceptor costs about $60,000. Iran is sending thousands of these drones at you, like bees coming at you. You have to be able to have an interception that's also economically feasible. The laser does. Each blast of the laser may cost potentially pennies. It's light.
Dr. Oren, I'm in a sci-fi movie here. I feel like when we use the word lasers, we're picturing, like I said, something from Star Wars or something of that nature. Anyway, when you say a laser can intercept in a fraction of a second, is the laser kind of everywhere, and then when a drone is detected, it just automatically zaps it, or is it something where there's a central hub, if you will, that shoots out lasers to these locations? I'm just trying to picture this in a way that's not in the movies.
So most of I know is a laser is a unit, like an Iron Dome unit, that can turn and swivel very, very fast, 360 degrees, with a radar system that's going to pick out the drone and automatically fire. I'll give you an example. We have a system that we are selling to NATO in Europe known as Torch. A Torch is a box the size of a TV that hangs on the side of a tank. And if an enemy comes up and fires an RPG missile at the tank, the Torch system identifies the source within a split second, a fraction, identifies the source, fires an iron ball that intercepts the RPG rocket, hits it far from the tank so that no one's hurt around the tank, and then automatically sends out a bullet that kills the guy who fires the RPG rocket. This is all within a second.
Wow. Now is this Israeli is this all Israeli technology, Dr. Oren?
Yes, it's all Israeli technology, and the Torch system is being sold to NATO, which will basically render many tanks invulnerable, certainly for that type of threat.
Wow, it's a phenomenal thing, and it's unbelievably horrific to think that what you said is true. That there's 100% chance Iranians are going to turn these and use them against Israel. Can you speak, Dr. Oren, to the feelings of the Israeli community, whether they be literally Israelis or American Jews as well, to the direction that they would like to see these midterm elections take for Israelis' purposes?
Well, they'd like to see candidates, both Republicans and Democrats, who are supportive of the state of Israel, supportive of the alliance between Israel and the United States, win. We'd like to probably see those candidates who are supportive of a more robust and activist American foreign policy in the world. Because Israel has an interest. It's not just Israel. I think there are dozens and dozens of countries in the world.
Of course.
In what we used to call the free world, who have an interest in America that is willing to project power, period. Because there are a lot of bad guys out there that are projecting power. A lot of them.
There's no question about it. The reason I ask, of course, is I'm curious as to the level of cooperation, the level of support from the current administration for the state of Israel. Is that enough?
It is enough, but we have policy differences. We do. Specifically on the Palestinian issue, less on Iran now.
Dr. Michael Oren, former Israeli Deputy Prime Minister for Diplomacy and Israeli Ambassador to the U.S. Thank you so much for the time, Doctor. We appreciate it. And our thoughts, of course, are with you. And I love the idea that protective laser system is being developed. It is 3 minutes before the top of the hour. I'm Bob France in for Hugh Hewitt. We'll be back.
Portions of the following program may contain pre-recorded material.
Morning glory, America. Bonjour, hi. Canada, Hugh Hewitt. I'm not there today, flying between Pittsburgh and Columbus as the Battleground Tour continues with my fellow talkers from the Salem Network. I'm headed to Cleveland eventually on Saturday night. Speaking of Cleveland, Bob France is my guest host this morning, the voice of reason in sweet Cleveland on the lake. I hope we're still celebrating when Bob talks to you. I don't know when I'm taping this, but thank you, Bob. Take it away.
Thank you very much, my good friend. 7 minutes after the hour as we continue the Hugh Hewitt program on this Thursday morning. It is the 20th morning of the 10th month of the year of our Lord 2022. I am Bob France, and I identify as a straight, white, Christian, male, deplorable, ultra-MAGA, semi-fascist, I guess. That's how I would be described by the American left. And my pronouns are up yours. That's the way that I roll, and I welcome you to the Hugh Hewitt Show. Yesterday, I wish I was hosting yesterday. Yesterday was International Pronoun Day. Yesterday would have been the day to come on here and do my entire rant on pronouns. I may do it anyway before the end of the day. But literally, that's how I feel about the entire pronoun game. Up yours is my two preferred pronouns, and if you don't use it, well then obviously you're intentionally offending me, and we're going to have problems. 800-520-1234 is the number to join us. I want to get the calls going this hour. I've had a lot of audio, and I still have a lot of audio. This is one of those things. I was talking to Generalissimo Dwayne before the show. There is so much audio/video that we can share with you if you happen to be watching the show in addition to listening to it. There is so much fertile ground here for us to plow as we now are, of course, less than 3 weeks away from the midterm elections that are going to determine whether this country survives or dies. It's literally that serious. That's not hyperbole. That's not exaggeration. That's reality. I explained that a little bit in the first hour. Maybe we'll talk about it again. But there's so much ground here to cover. It's really, really hard to focus on one thing. I could do an hour on about 7 or 8 or 9 different topics I could do a full hour on. I just don't have that kind of time. So I'm going to give you the audio as I can, but I want to hear from you. I really want to hear what Americans are thinking, particularly in battleground states. That's why Hugh's not on this week, or for most of this week anyway. Of course, he was on Monday, but he's making the tour. He's going to be in our city in Cleveland, Ohio, on Saturday. I'll be on stage with him along with Brandon Tatum and Eric Metaxas and Civil Rights Commissioner Peter Kirsanow. It is a battleground. And all of these battleground states are going to determine that survival or that death of this country. And so I want to hear from you in those states. I want to hear from Pennsylvanians about Dr. Oz and John Fetterman. I want to hear from Georgians about Stacy Abrams and her proclamation that the answer to inflation is just have abortions. Kill your babies. Why not? And what the heck? Maybe if you got a couple of mouths to feed that are living, you don't want them either. I want to hear from you. All of the battleground states, and here in Ohio, I talk all the time about the Tim Ryan, J.D. Vance Senate race. I'll be talking to J.D. Vance a little bit later on this morning on my local program, and I'm a big, big supporter of what he is and what he's become and what he's proven to be since he decided to enter politics. But I do want to hear from you, 800-520-1234, from all across this great country. Having said that, though, I want to dive into Pennsylvania for a moment here because I have been just perplexed as to how John Fetterman could be within 50 points of any candidate, much less Dr. Oz, in Pennsylvania. First of all, there is the obvious issue with his cognitive abilities. And this is not, he likes to say that Dr. Oz is attacking a person for their physical ailments, and all. No one is attacking John Fetterman for having a stroke. And no one is making fun of him for the not being able to talk, not being able to communicate, not being able to understand what other people say, and to communicate effectively the things that he wants to say. No one is doing that, and I'm not doing that now when I say, however, that John Fetterman cannot serve in the United States Senate in his current condition. It's not his fault, but it's reality. You cannot serve in the United States Senate, one of the 100 most important positions in this country, outside of president and vice president. You cannot serve in that capacity if you can't comprehend, understand, process, analyze, and so on and so forth, and communicate your thoughts effectively. And this is a guy who can't talk. You've seen countless examples of him on the stump saying things that make no sense. And he doesn't even realize that what he has said, it was misspoken. He's like, that went well. And that's not making fun of him. It's just acknowledging a disability because of a terrible, tragic situation. I liken it to a basketball player. Maybe he's the best basketball player in the world. Maybe. And he'd be in your starting lineup immediately if he hadn't been in a car accident and broken his leg. You're not going to put a guy in a cast on the basketball court because he's going to be a hindrance. He cannot perform to the level that you need him to be able to perform if he had a medical emergency happen to him that made him unable to run, jump, etc., right? Well, that's John Fetterman. He had a stroke, and it has impaired his ability to process, to think, to communicate, to listen, to reason, to understand. Now, having said that part of it, which, of course, like I said, should literally make him unelectable on simply a can-you-do-it basis, now we have to also acknowledge this fact, that his stroke has nothing to do with what kind of a reprehensible, disgusting human being he is and what he has proven to be in his political career before. This is a man who has more sympathy for violent criminals, including murderers, than he has ever had for victim one of any of those people. You've heard the clips of him saying he wants to empty out at least 1/3 of all Pennsylvania prisons, if not all American prisons. Well, it's gotten worse. What you're about to hear is kind of staggering. Now, I don't know the radio show that he was on here. It's an unknown radio appearance. But what you're going to hear is John Fetterman being asked the question that if you had a magic wand and you could fix one thing, what would you fix? And I suppose if I were to ask you that question and you were to answer on the phone lines at 800-520-1234, you might say, I would fix this inflation crisis because it's crippling middle-class America. Or I would fix the abortion issue. Or I would fix national security. Or I would fix, food and sustenance issues for impoverished veterans. Whatever your core issue would be if you had a magic wand, I have a feeling that only John Fetterman would have chosen this. Cut 25. Not hearing cut 25. Let's see if we can play that.
If you had a magic wand and you could wave it and fix one thing, what would it be?
Life without parole in Pennsylvania. We could save billions in revenue long term. We could save thousands of lives and not make anyone less safe. And also expunge as many permanent records of people that have been living their best lives and have been paying well beyond when they should have for a charge that they caught, 10, 15, 20 years ago.
If John Fetterman could wave a magic wand, he would allow murderers to go free. That's the one thing he would do first. He would end life without parole in prisons. Murderers who have been proven to not be safe for society when they are out and free, who kill people, who have been locked away by the justice system because if they are in free society, they will kill more people. He wants these people who have been given life in prison to be set free. That's his number one. That's his go-to. Now, I've got thoughts on that. You've got thoughts on that. So does Senator Tom Cotton, cut 24.
I mean, when John Fetterman was asked, if you had a magic wand, you could have one wish, what would it be? He didn't say, like, I would end our inflation problem, or I'd bring down the price of gas, or I'd solve the opioid epidemic that's killing so many Pennsylvanians. He said, I would end long sentences for murderers. That's in addition to all the murderers he's voted to let out of prison. So, yeah, there's an absolute sense of urgency here in Pennsylvania and really across the country because most Americans understand the stakes of this election.
I hope most Americans understand the stakes of this, and I hope most Pennsylvanians who may be listening to us this morning have a certain kind of thought about that. This is a guy talking about John Fetterman who also said, and I don't have the audio for this one, but I did hear it myself, also declared that, these murderers who are in prison like that, they're like Morgan Freeman in Shawshank Redemption. Did you hear that? I don't know. Generally, Simone, maybe you can grab that somewhere else. I don't think we have it queued up at the moment, but we'll see if we can grab it. He literally said Do you think that Morgan Freeman should have been executed or should have been forced to live his entire life in prison for what he did? Because that's what these people are like. He literally wants you to think that all murderers are like the lovable, Red character in Shawshank Redemption who'd committed a terrible murder when he was a teenager and then is in his 50s or 60s now and is still there. He thinks that's what American murderers are like. It's really an astounding thing. Dr. Oz responded to that on Hannity, too. We've got some of that I want to play for you. But moreover, I want to hear from you. What do you think about that? Pennsylvanians, let me hear from you. 800-520-1234 is the number to join us. I'm Bob France in for Hugh Hewitt here on the Salem Radio Network. Good morning, Patriots. Welcome back to the Hugh Hewitt Show. I wonder if he's ever done that to himself. My name is Bob France, sitting in for Hugh. It's 22 minutes past the hour. As you know, Hugh has been working so hard and raising the flag all month for our friends at Alliance Defending Freedom, America's largest Christian legal defense organization. The folks who have already won 14 cases before the U.S. Supreme Court, including one on behalf of Jack Phillips, the Masterpiece Cake Shop owner from Denver, who the state of Colorado has just tormented, tried to force him to make a same-sex wedding cake in violation of his religious beliefs. But ADF is also working very hard. They're urgently active with their Academic Freedom Project on college campuses. And they also operate a Center for Life, focusing on the new realities now that Roe v. Wade has been overturned and sent back to the 50 states. Denise Harley is ADF's director at the Center for Life, and she's excited to help promote alternatives to abortion.
Oh, we have these fantastic resources. We have nonprofits, thousands of them around the nation. And so I'm really excited that we'll have an opportunity, hopefully, to divert funds away from places like Planned Parenthood that are profiting off of the destruction of human life and into more resources for these moms.
Yeah, guessing Stacy Abrams would not be a fan of this, considering she just decides to kill babies to save money in your grocery bill. Alliance Defending Freedom never charges a dime to its clients, and that's what makes them heroes. But the bills do have to be paid, and their legal costs are defrayed by generous tax-deductible donations from people like you and me. Call the new phone number now to help. It's 855-374-4123. I'll do it slower so you can write it down or put it in your phone. 855-374-4123. Or you can go easily to HughHewitt.com and just click on the Alliance Defending Freedom banner. Your first gift to ADF will be matched 100% by a generous friend of ADF. So whatever you donate will be instantly doubled. We're in the final days of this huge campaign. Do not let pro-life women down. Step up today to help ADF help you and help all of us. All right, I want to hit this Fetterman thing one more time because this is a different element of what I just described. His extraordinarily odd, strange, I mean, it's a bizarro thing. His affinity for murderers. It's just weird how he wants to empty prisons, violent criminals, not talking about, simple pot possession type of criminals. He's talking about the most violent criminals, people guilty of homicides he wants to let go. It's a fascination for him, and I can't figure out why. Now, we already played the clip where he said if he had a magic wand, the first thing he would do is set these people free. Now listen to cut 35.
So, and I believe in redemption. And I would just ask anyone watching, I would say, if you've seen Shawshank Redemption, the movie, and if you, at the end of the movie, you would vote to have Morgan Freeman's character die in prison, then that's the choice. That's really that you look at the end of it. And if somebody's done 40, 45, or even more than 50 years, and they've had a perfect record, and they have demonstrated a lot of remorse for what's done, I haven't met a single person that said, yeah, Morgan Freeman should die in prison. It's all a choice on redemption.
This man wants to be in the United States Senate. This man thinks that American killers and murderers are all like Morgan Freeman. And they deserve to be set free because, redemption and Shawshank. And boy, look at that. Would you really want to put that old man to death? Would you really want him to serve the rest of his life in prison? This guy cannot differentiate reality from fiction. He cannot differentiate Hollywood movies from American society. He thinks that American murderers are all reformed and redeemed and want to go and help Andy Dufresne sand a boat down in, what was it? Where did he cross again? What was that? What was the name of the town? I can't remember the name of the town now. Soatenejo or something like that in Mexico. He thinks that's what all American murderers are like. Excuse me. I'm going to go to the phones. Pennsylvania is what I asked for. Pennsylvania is what we get. Robert in Pennsylvania. Go right ahead. Welcome to the Hugh Hewitt Show. Robert, are you there? Okay, it looks like Robert is not there, and it looks like we're coming up on a break anyway. That's okay. So what we'll do is we'll take this time out. We'll come back. I do want to get Pennsylvanians on the line. I want to get Georgians on the line. I want to get Ohioans on the line. I want to get Coloradans on the line. I want to hear from you, particularly in these battleground states, on the Hugh Hewitt Show.
Portions of the Hugh Hewitt Show are brought to you in part by Salem Now and Border Battle.
33 minutes past the hour, and we continue on the Hugh Hewitt Show on this Thursday morning. My name is Bob France, sitting in for Hugh in the ReliefFactor.com studios of Cleveland, Ohio, AM 1420, The Answer. My program airs right after this one in Cleveland time, 9 to noon. And if you ever care to listen to it, it's at WHKRadio.com, WHKRadio.com, or on the Salem app, all of these different ways that you can tune in. Honored to be here. If I had a magic wand, what would I do with it? What one thing would I fix if I had a magic wand? John Fetterman, Senate candidate in Pennsylvania, says he would release murderers from prisons. That's what he would do. Not anything to help Americans, not lower your gas bills, your energy costs, solve the fentanyl crisis,
fix the
seal
border.
the border. Thank you, Dwayne. You beat me to it. Fix the border or seal the border. None of those things. No. Let's release the killers. It's a remarkable thing. And I'm struggling to understand how he is leading Dr. Oz. How he's within 50 points of Dr. Oz is beyond my comprehension. So I need Pennsylvanians to explain that to me. What's he doing? What weird hold does he have over a significant number of Pennsylvania voters? Gregory is in Pennsylvania. He's calling the Hugh Hewitt Show at 800-520-1234. Bob France sitting in for Hugh. Gregory, go right ahead, sir.
Good morning, Bob. Nice to hear your voice. You're a voice of sanity a lot of times. I identify, my pronouns are ultra mega, and
I love that. Those are perfect. I said this earlier in the show. Yesterday was International Pronoun Day, and Morgan was on. I didn't get a chance to host that one. I'm going to do it today anyway. When you call the show, I'm going to request your pronouns right up front.
Oh my gosh!
You just did it. Well, Ultra MAGA works for me. Ultra/MAGA.
I'm so sick and tired of hearing about this Fetty boy guy, because he is just not representative of anything that most of the Pennsylvanians that I know stand for. And I want to talk about Mastriano, because Mastriano is a 30-year Army veteran, and he brings a lot of class to the governor's office, and we really need to start talking about Mastriano, because if Josh Shapiro gets into the governor's mansion, this state is going to go the way of Philadelphia. All the crime that is across this state is because of Josh Shapiro and his encouragement of people like Larry Krasner and people like Jim Kenney, who decide not to enforce crime or crime enforcement, and not to put criminals in their place, but give them a pedestal to rise on. This is a bunch of garbage. Pennsylvanians, if you're listening now, you cannot allow Josh Shapiro to get into the governor's mansion. And Dr. Oz, you have to stop talking about Fetterman and his impairment, and start talking about what you're going to do for Pennsylvanians. I'm so sick and tired of hearing this guy, Fetterman.
Well, I'll tell you what, and thank you very much for the phone call. I think Dr. Oz is doing that. I do. I think he's talking about a lot more than Fetterman. I think he's talking about what has to happen to help people in Pennsylvania. And if you're a United States Senator, that extends to the rest of the country. As a matter of fact, Dr. Oz was on with Hannity last night, I believe it was. Let's hear cut 23.
There's no question why this race is now neck and neck. I focused on the issues you mentioned, especially the economy, crime, and the border with drugs.
Gas.
Right? Well, gas is part of, to me, the economy, because if you really want to drop inflation, and it's a much less painful way than raising interest rates, allow natural gas to be unleashed in Pennsylvania. Tom Cotton was coming out. Tom Cotton and I were on Wellheads just to look at this, but when you say that fracking is a stain on Pennsylvania, which John Fetterman did, and you showed videos of him saying what he actually believes, that's insulting to people who are making their living in that area. It actually destroys communities, and we drive up inflation because energy drives 1/3 of the total inflation that we see.
Did I hear it wrong, or did Dr. Oz just say this race is now neck and neck lump? I may have heard that wrong. Has anybody figured out what that is? I know Tucker did a segment on it, and people are all over the place are asking about it. Is it a part of his condition? Is it something that happened with this? It's a very strange thing, and I wonder about not only the cognitive health of John Fetterman, But if that neck lump is something to be concerned about in terms of other physical health, it ought to be discussed. There ought to be a question as if somebody is physically fit or capable enough to serve in the United States Senate. I'm not saying it should be the deciding issue, but it ought to be an issue. And by the way, Dr. Oz is answering the questions about inflation. He is talking about drug policies. He is talking about homelessness. He's talking about, like I said, the fentanyl issues. So I think he's doing a decent job. I really, really do. I just cannot understand, Pennsylvania friends, how John Fetterman is polling anywhere near him, much less leading him by a slight margin. It's a bizarre thing to me. Let's stay in Pennsylvania. David, you're on the Hugh Hewitt Show. Bob Franz sitting in. David, go ahead, sir.
Yes, well, first of all, my pronouns, I can't say them, but they begin with F and U.
Fired up, right? F-U, fired up.
The previous caller mentioned our Republican gubernatorial candidate. Mastriano is the Democrat-selected candidate. He's a complete dud. He's not motivating anybody to get out to the polls. And that's the only reason that Fetterman is anywhere near odds. Selena Zito is confident that Pennsylvanians do a lot of ballot splitting, and I agree. But it sure doesn't help to have nothing at the top of the top of the ballot. I do have some advice for Stacy Abrams, as long as I'm here.
Okay, go ahead.
Us seniors are very expensive at the end of life. What you going to do about that? Right?
That's a very interesting question.
If you're gonna abort babies because they're expensive, what you going to do with us seniors when we start costing you a lot of money in end of life care?
I'm going to say something here, my friend. That question that you just asked is absurd, but the fact that you have to ask it because it's reality, we have to accept. If you're going to say that a hungry baby, a baby that's going to need to be fed after it's born, is too much, so let's just end that baby's life before it becomes a financial burden on us, which is what she's done. The logical, I took it to another logical place. What about the baby that's already been born? That's really putting a crimp on the family budget now. I got too many of these kids now. What do we say we dump a couple of those? You're right to say our seniors near the end of life. This is why, I'm preaching to a very educated choir here, so I don't need to be over the top with this, but, this call for the United States to have universal health care, government-controlled universal single-payer health care, that's exactly why we can never allow that to happen, because they will absolutely try to determine the quality of the life of a senior depending on what their health condition is and what their prognosis is versus the cost to the government. And that's when we fear them saying, you know what, we can't fix you. We'll just make you comfortable while you fade away. It's too expensive for the surgery. The drugs are a little bit too expensive too. We'll just make you comfortable while you fade away. I know it sounds silly, but he's right. He's right to ask that question. If you don't value life for the preborn or the recently born, then where does the line get drawn? If that's your answer to inflation, which is what they're saying. Robert is in Pennsylvania as well on the Hugh Hewitt Show. Robert, go ahead, sir.
How's it going?
Going well, sir. What's on your mind?
I guess my pronouns would be amazing and MAGA.
I like it. I like it. Welcome to the show, Amazing. Go right ahead.
So I'm a 28-year-old, live in Pennsylvania. I live in rural Pennsylvania, kind of by the New York border. I'm like 30 miles from Scranton.
Okay.
There is no one out here in the rural Pennsylvania who supports Fetterman. I mean, it's nobody. And I don't understand the polls. I don't believe the polls. I think they're all nonsense. I feel like people my age are kind of lax in their duties as Americans to understand politics, but it seems like nobody can avoid the fact that gas is $4 a gallon. And I'm sorry, I'm outside. It's freezing cold out here right now.
No, you're doing fine. You're doing fine as long as you can handle it. We're good. So what you're saying, though, is in rural Pennsylvania, there's nobody who supports Fetterman. So basically these numbers are being skewed by the Philadelphias and the Pittsburghs.
Yeah, it's the cities. it's the
Right.
cities, even Scranton around here. We have it's funny. It's a testament to Joe Biden, the Joe Biden Highway, which is full of craters and is always under construction because the infrastructure around here is awful. It's shot. We're broke. This area just needs a full revamp. I mean, the whole area is poor. Gas prices. I live in Susquehanna County, and the gas prices here are the highest in most of Pennsylvania.
Well, I would like to say this to anybody listening to you and me right now in Pennsylvania. That isn't going to change if John Fetterman is contributing votes in the United States Senate. The same destructive energy policies that are causing $4 a gallon are going to continue if you allow guys like that in the United States Senate. I'm Bob France in for Hugh Hewitt. Quick time out, right back on the Salem Radio Network.
Don't go anywhere, America. Bob France is coming right back. Let me do our profit break, as the great Rush used to say. Even as I fly around, I got to make sure you remember that drmartypets.com/Hewitt, new sponsor of the show, great sponsor of the show. When I get Ralphie the grand dog on Halloween, he's going to be so excited. I'm going to have these amazing pet treats that Generalissimo has been giving to Lassie 1 and Lassie 2. Who can remember somebody else's dog's name? I can't. But drmartypets.com/Hewitt, or text my name, Hewitt, Hewitt, to 511-511. You will be amazed, absolutely amazed at how much your dog loves the dog food. No meat meal, no artificial products, just meat. And I will tell you, drmartypets.com/Hewitt is where you order it. Get the extra free bag of dog treats when you place your first order, plus 20% off when you use my name, Hewitt. drmartypets.com/Hewitt, or text Hewitt to 511-511. You might get one more text messaging, and rates might apply, but make sure you go to drmartypets.com. No plural Martys. Pets is plural. drmartypets.com, or text Hewitt to 511-511. Let me also remind you, please, about Border Battle over at salemnow.com. One of the big issues of election 2022 is the fact that Joe Biden collapsed border protections to almost nothing. 2.4 million people have entered the country this year alone, many of them bearing the fentanyl that killed more than 100,000 people last year. Borderbattle.com is by Turning Point USA. Charlie Kirk helped produce it. It's an amazing 6-part series. All you have to do is head over to salemnow.com. Use my name, Hugh, for a 20% discount at salemnow.com. Use my name, Hugh, Hugh, and you will get Border Battle, a 6-part series. Drops a new part every week until the election to focus and make you think about the indifference. That's the only word that's applicable. The indifference displayed towards the border by Team Biden. Border Battle at salemnow.com. Finally, don't let anyone forget, relieffactor.com, relieffactor.com, relieffactor.com. I tell you about it every day. I take it with me on these trips when we go barnstorming before an election. We've been doing it since the year 2000. We do 5 or 6 stops. I started in Detroit last week, going to Detroit, to Denver this week, then on to Pittsburgh and Columbus and Cleveland. Never quite know who's ahead of me or who's behind me, but I do know what hotel I'm supposed to go to, and I always love talking to people who are going to vote in the elections. Please come out for the Battleground Tour, but know that I take my relieffactor.com with me. I'm never going to get left home without my relieffactor.com. Not going to do it. Wouldn't be prudent. Relieffactor.com. Take it every day. Whether you're on the road or at home, relieffactor.com. Come right back for more Bob Franz after this.
There's really something magical about that music, isn't there? I just always find it's just perfect morning music for the Hugh Hewitt program. I love it. Just wakes you up peacefully. I kind of see the sunrise when I hear that music start to lift like that. Welcome, Bob France sitting in for Hugh Hewitt once again in the ReliefFactor.com studios of AM 1420, The Answer in Cleveland, Ohio. That's my home base. Phone line's the same, by the way, to get here. It's 800-520-1234. We'll go right back to the phones in a second. But did you hear Chris Hayes on MSNBC? I would be, reticent to think that people don't all watch Chris Hayes on MSNBC, right? I mean, it's kind of part of our routine, and it's a ritual. Who misses Chris Hayes, right? Other than almost all of America. But when he says something this outlandish and this outrageous, I feel like it deserves a response. Chris Hayes is angry that you care about your cost of your gas. That you care about the cost of groceries, cost of clothing, cost of auto parts, cost of your insurance, cost of virtually everything that is a part of your budget and your family's life, that you care about the border, that you care about illegal drugs crossing the border. He's angry that you care about all of these things other than what happened on January 6th. He's mad. How are we talking about gas prices and grocery prices when there was an insurrection? Listen, cut 27.
Oil companies, OPEC, Saudis, not exactly eager to make sure prices are low before an election where Democratic candidates are vulnerable. It's also why Saudi Arabia might want to suddenly announce a cut in oil production right before the midterms. Of course, Democrats can't just throw their hands up and say, oh, well, because the future of American democracy is in, as we report night in, night out on this program, real peril, existential peril. One of the two major parties is currently under the thrall of a guy who tried a violent coup unsuccessfully, but has basically announced he'd do it all over again. By one analysis, 60% of Americans will have an election denier on their ballot this November. The stakes in the upcoming elections are the highest they've been in a very long time. This is the first post-coup election in America. We cannot expect threats to democracy to be the only salient issue for voters, even if it is salient for a lot. I mean, there's millions of voters, and people have complicated and busy lives, and they've got things they're thinking about when they go to the polls, like the cost of living, inflation, and yes, gas prices, the one price in America that is posted on every street corner, those digits, they are going to be front of mind for voters. And so we find ourselves in a situation where keeping gas prices low is key to preserving and strengthening the future of our democracy. And so here we are. Hence Biden releasing oil from the reserves today. And all this speaks to what the future of our elections will look like, because you can't just count on one thing to preserve American democracy. You can't just count on the voters to vote for it. And you can't just count on the courts, and you can't just count on civil society. It's going to require a broad coalition of factors, people being smart and tactically astute, all working together across the spectrum of civil society to preserve the American experiment.
The only thing missing from that, if you were watching this, is the big red nose of this clown. Because everything that he said was literally clownish. He's exasperated. He's angry. He's mad. You care more about the digits on the corner of the price of gasoline that you put into your vehicle than you do about January 6th and the fact that there was an insurrection. What did he say, Donald Trump? Donald Trump led a coup. He led a coup, an armed coup, a violent coup in order to overtake the government. And, of course, this is the sound of leading a violent coup, it would appear.
We're going to walk down to the Capitol, and we're going to cheer on our brave senators and congressmen and women. I know that everyone here will soon be marching over to the Capitol building to peacefully and patriotically make your voices heard.
Yeah, that's a coup, boy, if ever I've heard a coup. March down there and peacefully and patriotically make your voices heard, which means what? Stand outside of the Capitol and cheer and chant and demand that they hold off certifying the election until an audit can be conducted. Boy, yeah, that's a coup. Listen, I want to point something out to Chris Hayes. America doesn't care. America doesn't care about your January 6th commission. America doesn't care about this ridiculous public show trial that features, for the first time in the history of American justice, 9 prosecutors and 0 defense attorneys. There's 7 Democrats prosecuting Trump on that committee and 2 Republicans, because the Republicans who were appointed by the Republican leadership, Jim Jordan was one of them, weren't allowed to serve. So they have 2 Trump-hating Republicans, along with 7 Democrats who hate Trump as well, 9 prosecutors not being allowed to be cross-examined, any of the witnesses, any of the testimony, any of the evidence, any of the videos. No one is allowed to cross-examine or challenge any of it. And they think that this is proven that Donald Trump led an insurrection and should thus be jailed on that basis. How do I know nobody cares, Chris Hayes? Because when they realized this was not gaining any traction as the hearings were being held at 10 o'clock in the morning in Washington, when they realized that nobody during the workday was paying attention, and they said, we got to put this on prime time so everybody can see it, that didn't work either, because they put it on prime time and no one watched. People watched Green Acres reruns on TV Land more than they watched the J6 hearings. That's because that is not what matters to the American people, and it's why your party is going to lose big on November 8th. Hour 2 in the books. Another one to go on the Hugh Hewitt Show. Bob France sitting in. We'll be right back.
Portions of the following program may contain pre-recorded material.
Morning glory, America. Bonjour, hi. Candidate Hugh Hewitt. I'm not there today, flying between Pittsburgh and Columbus as the Battleground Tour continues with my fellow talkers from the Salem Network. I'm headed to Cleveland eventually on Saturday night. Speaking of Cleveland, Bob France is my guest host this morning, the voice of reason in sweet Cleveland on the lake. I hope we're still celebrating when Bob talks to you. I don't know when I'm taping this, but thank you, Bob. Take it away.
Well, my friend, we are not celebrating baseball, if that's what you were referring to, but we are celebrating a lot of positive momentum in the midterm elections coming up now, less than 3 weeks away. Obviously, it's 3 weeks from Tuesday, this past Tuesday. And, I'm going to be celebrating that because we have a country to save, quite literally, to borrow a line from our mutual friend, Larry Elder. Welcome. I am Bob France, live in the ReliefFactor.com studios here in Cleveland, Ohio, of AM 1420, The Answer. It's good to be with you. Phone lines are open all across America, particularly focused on battleground states, but you do not have to be from one of them to dial 800-520-1234. But we're talking about the Senate race in Pennsylvania. We're talking about the Senate race in Ohio. We're talking about the governor's race in Georgia, the governor's race in Arizona. We haven't hit much. We haven't talked about the Senate race in Georgia, Warnock and Herschel Walker either. So any of these big time, Colorado. I've got a clip from that you need to hear from Sherry Beasley, who's a Senate candidate in North Carolina. No matter where you are welcome to call and give us your thoughts on these races and the importance of, sweeping Republican victories, getting us a 30 to 40 seat majority in the House, getting us a 2 to 4 to 5 seat majority in the Senate to literally reverse all of the devastation we have seen happen to this country since Joe Brandon took over. It literally is that crucial. We are talking about a survival of a nation after November 8th, or we are talking about the death of a nation as we have known it after November 8th. It's literally that serious. So we welcome you. Bottom of this hour, by the way, we're going to talk about one of those issues relating to the survival of this country, and that would mean the survival of American sovereignty, and that we would be interested in, protecting the southern border. Tom Homan, former director of ICE, is going to be joining us to talk about those issues. But between now and then, like I said, I welcome you. 800-520-1234. I haven't talked about Biden's remarks yesterday as he continues to try to justify his ridiculous, insane, impossible to comprehend energy policies. The attempt or intention to eliminate fossil fuels and to convert to an all-clean green energy grid, if you will. So yesterday he announced the release of 15 million barrels of oil from the Strategic Petroleum Reserve to help lower the gas prices just a few cents between now and November 8th so that he won't, get quite the comeuppance and the shellacking that he is due if the prices start to fall a little bit. Never mind the fact that the Strategic Petroleum Reserve is at the lowest it has been since 1984 when Reagan was still trying to build it back up. Never mind that fact. Never mind the fact that the American people see right through this. He is justifying this, saying it's not about votes. It's not about getting people to vote for me before November 8th. It's sound energy policy. Listen to cut number 4, please.
What is your response to Republicans who say you are only doing this SPR release to help Democrats in the midterms?
Where have they been the last 4 months? That's my response.
Is it politically motivated, sir?
No, it's not.
3 weeks before the midterms.
Look, it makes sense. I've been doing this for how long now? It's not politically motivated at all. It's motivated to make sure that I continue to push on what I've been pushing on. And that is making sure there's enough oil that's being pumped by the companies so that we have the ability to be able to produce enough gas that we need here at home, oil we need here at home, and at the same time, keep moving in the direction of providing for alternative energy.
What? Releasing 1 million barrels a day for the last 4 months and now announcing another 15 million barrels before the election is the exact opposite of getting more oil pumped and getting more oil refined into gasoline. It's the exact opposite. when this country is crippled by a worldwide, by the way, something that we did not have to worry about under Donald Trump, when we were literally energy independent and a net exporter of energy for the first time in American history. But now that we're not led by Donald Trump and those policies, we are in the Biden world of being dependent on other nations to stabilize the world oil market. Rather than ramping up energy production in the United States to the highest of its capability in order to battle this energy crisis, he's dipping into the savings account. It's like being broke, okay? It's like being broke. Your checking account, your family's checking account is at zero or it's in the red, but you've got some money in the savings account. And you think, okay, what should we do in order to be able to provide our food? What should we do in order to be able to pay our mortgage or pay our rent, et cetera, et cetera? We got nothing in the checking account. We got money in the savings account. What do we do? Well, option A would be go to work. You're unemployed. You got nothing in the account. Get a job. Earn more money. Then pay those bills with it. And let your savings account continue to grow. Or option B, just spend what's in the savings account. The hell with producing new money. Let's just use the stuff we got over here saved. That's what he's doing. He's spending America's savings account, which is supposed to be for times of war and times of national calamity, for crying out loud, times when we can't access energy and we can't drill, we can't frack, we can't mine, and so forth. Instead of ramping up the production and getting more of what we need, he's just spending what we already have. Why? Because gangrene, which is Biden's base, his climate nut base, gangrene won't let him maximize new drilling, fracking, and mining. He won't let him do it because we're supposed to end fossil fuels, remember? That's exactly what he promised he would do.
You don't have to agree, but I want you to look in my eyes. I guarantee you, we're going to end fossil fuel, and I am not going to cooperate with it, okay?
So this is a promise that he made. I guarantee you we're going to end fossil fuels, and that includes oil, which brings us to cut number 5.
One more thing I want to mention today. Our country needs to pass permitting reform to accelerate the development of clean energy. Right now, the process of getting clean energy projects approved is too cumbersome and too time-consuming. So I'm asking the Congress, pass a permitting bill to speed up the approval of all kinds of energy production, from wind to solar to clean hydrogen, because we need to get this moving now, quickly, now. It would take, if we do this, it would take historic clean energy investments that I signed into law and put them into action. In fact, one independent analysis has already estimated that the $369 billion we're making in federal investment that will generate, if we just that, will generate $1.7 trillion in total public and private investments in the years ahead. You can increase oil and gas production now while still moving full speed ahead to accelerate our transition to clean energy. That way we can lower energy costs for American families, enhance our national security at a very difficult moment.
If you can understand half of what he said as he slurred past his dentures, what Joe Biden just said is that oil companies should increase production now so that we can quickly kill oil companies and transition away from them to solar, wind, and hydrogen power, which will do absolutely nothing for the petroleum needs of this country. Nothing. And by the way, the idea that we're going to transition away from gasoline-powered vehicles, internal combustion engines, in all engines between now and 2035, which is what California has pledged and about 14 or 15 other states have pledged, and which the federal government is pushing, including the Transportation Secretary Pete Buttigieg, the idea that that is clean energy or green energy is just so much nonsense, and it's very frustrating that millions and millions of Americans don't understand that an electric car battery doesn't produce electricity. You understand that? An electric car battery does not produce electricity. An electric car battery stores electricity and then propels the vehicle with what it has stored. Where does the battery get the electricity, however? Where does it get the electricity that it stores up? And for those who don't know, and sadly but truthfully, millions of Americans don't know this, that energy comes from coal and natural gas to the tune of over 80%. You change the entire American transportation industry from gasoline-powered vehicles to electric vehicles, you increase the demand for coal and natural gas, fossil fuels, exponentially. That's how insane these people are. 800-520-1234. That's the phone number to join the Hugh Hewitt Show. Bob France sitting in. We'll be back. Good morning once again, Patriots. 22 minutes past the hour. As we continue on the Hugh Hewitt Show, Bob France sitting in and reminding you one more time today about the extraordinary importance of Alliance Defending Freedom. Hugh is telling you all month, and I'm going to continue it now, the largest Christian legal defense organization in America. They have already won 14 cases before the U.S. Supreme Court, including, of course, the one for Jack Phillips, the Masterpiece Cake Shop owner who was tried to force to be made to make same-sex wedding cakes in violation of his religious beliefs. But ADF is also urgently active with an academic freedom project on college campuses and a Center for Life, focusing on the new realities now that Roe versus Wade has been overturned and sent back to the 50 states. Now, Denise Harley is ADF's director at the Center for Life, and she's excited to help promote alternatives to abortion.
Oh, we have these fantastic resources. We have nonprofits, thousands of them around the nation. And so I'm really excited that we'll have an opportunity, hopefully, to divert funds away from places like Planned Parenthood that are profiting off of the destruction of human life and into more resources for these moms.
Alliance Defending Freedom never charges a dime to the clients they represent, but the costs do have to be met. There are legal costs, and they need to be defrayed by generous tax-deductible donations from people like you and me. Here's what you need to do. Call the new phone number, 855-374-4123. Again, it's 855-374-4123, or if you can't remember the number, maybe you're driving, you can remember HughHewitt.com. Just go there, click on the Alliance Defending Freedom banner, and your first gift to ADF will be matched 100% by a generous friend of ADF. So whatever you do, whatever you can donate, it will be instantly doubled. We're in the final days of this very important campaign. Don't let pro-life women down. Step up today to help ADF help you, to help all of us. All right, I want to go back to the phones now. We're going to talk to... how about a hometown call, or at least a home state call? Eli is calling us from somewhere in Ohio on the Hugh Hewitt Show. Eli, good morning. What are your pronouns?
Hi, my name's Eli Matthews, and I'm a male.
There you go. That's fine.
Years old.
That works for me. You can just be male. We're doing it. Yesterday was International Pronouns Day, so I'm asking all of our callers to identify their pronouns. Have a little fun with it this morning. But anyway, what's on your mind, Eli?
I'd like to know if it's true that the Center for Disease Control, as they call themselves, made it mandatory that all students in the United States need to have the COVID-19 so-called vaccine so they can go to school. And if they don't get that vaccine, then they don't get to go to public school. That's what my understanding of it is, and I believe they voted on it yesterday. And I hope it's not true.
Well, it is true to an extent. And allow me to explain, and I'm glad you called. Thank you for the call, Eli. What the CDC panel did yesterday, they unanimously voted to add COVID-19 vaccine to the recommended childhood schedule of vaccines. Now, you probably know about all of these oh, for goodness sakes, I'm trying to remember some of them now because we had to just record these things for my own kids. But the childhood schedule of vaccines is lengthy, and for a lot of people it's dangerous. A lot of people do not agree with it. A lot of people are fine with it. But yes, the reality is in most states, public schools will not allow kids to come in unless they have proof of their vaccine. It's part of registering for kindergarten. You have to show that you've had all of your childhood vaccinations. So what CDC did is they added COVID-19 vaccine to the recommended childhood schedule. Does that mean that schools in the future will insist that it be given in order to allow kids to come in? Possibly. The decision came from the agency's advisory committee. It would add COVID-19 to the Public Health Agency's Vaccines for Children program. Again, these are recommendations. 15 voting members of the mostly scientific or medical expert backgrounds make up the panel responsible for making vaccine recommendations. The Wednesday recommendation now goes to the CDC Director, Rochelle Walensky, and the United States Department of Health and Human Services for approval. Once approved, the advice will be included in the CDC's Morbidity and Mortality Weekly Report, a publication of public health information, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Here's the thing, though. I believe, in all seriousness, that what is happening here, and I'm going to kind of echo the words of Alex Berenson. Oh, we got a break coming here. I'm going to echo the words of Alex Berenstein here. What we have here, if this does indeed go through, will probably lead to the greatest pushback from parents in the history of this country, and it could lead to the end of public schools as we know it, because people are not getting their kids vaccinated. Less than 2% of eligible kids between ages of 6 months and 5 years now have been vaccinated. Parents will not stand for this. We'll talk more about it later, but for now, we'll take a time out on the Hugh Hewitt Show. Bob France sitting in. We'll be back. 33 minutes past the hour, and we continue on the Hugh Hewitt Show. Bob France sitting in here in Cleveland, Ohio, the ReliefFactor.com studios of AM 1420. The Answer. We'll come back to phone calls here in just a minute, but I want to welcome to the program our next guest. He is a guy I always enjoy talking to, even though the subject matter is not enjoyable, but he is so passionate about protecting and serving American citizens that I can't get enough of listening to his wisdom on these subjects. Joining us now is Tom Homan. He is the former acting director of ICE, Immigration and Customs Enforcement, and he is very, very concerned about the ongoing sieve that is our southern border. Mr. Homan, good to have you back on the program here on Hugh's program, and it's good to talk to you personally as well. How are you, sir?
I'm doing fine. Thanks for having me.
I want to ask your opinion on a couple of things. Eric Adams, the mayor of New York, has been going crazy lately, completely demanding federal resources, saying we have to stop sending these plane loads and bus loads of migrants to New York City and to New York State. We just can't deal with it. It's an overflow. It's a crisis. All of these things, and yet, meanwhile, he is cutting commercials talking about the wonderful, glorious treatment that they are giving these individuals. They are putting up tent cities that are not tent cities. They're giving them 4-star hotel rooms and taking care of them in extraordinary ways. How are we supposed to read the impact of illegal immigration at our southern border when these people are being brought into American cities and they're getting mixed messages from leaders like that?
I think he's having trouble, justifying what he's doing to his base, right? He gets on national TV. When it first started, you got Democratic mayors, you got Democratic governors, talking about this crisis, and that was bad for the Democratic Party. So I'm sure he got a few phone calls from the White House telling him he's got to stop complaining because he's bringing more attention to the border. Because before the governor of Texas, Governor Florida started shipping these people, you didn't hear the media talking about it. I think what Abbott and DeSantis did was genius because they got Democratic mayors and Democratic governors start talking about immigration right before the midterm. So they put this on the front page of every newspaper, and it was great. But I think at the same time, the Democrat mayors and governors are being attacked by their own because they're claiming to be a sanctuary city, but they're raising this issue and putting it on the front page. So I think they're getting hit from both sides. But I think what the governors did was great, and they ought to continue because you got to call out these sanctuary cities. They claim to be sanctuary cities. They want to be sanctuary for criminals. They don't want ICE in their jails, but they don't want to be sanctuary for people who claim asylum seekers. It doesn't make sense. So we're calling out the hypocrisy of these cities.
The mayor of El Paso, it was reported, multiple reports said that the mayor of El Paso was going to request a federal emergency status so that they can get emergency funds to deal with the overwhelming number. The mayor of El Paso has sent more people to New York than the governor of Texas as a whole. And he was going to declare make an emergency declaration, and the White House got to him and said, "Don't do it. Don't make this declaration because it's going to look awful before the midterms if our own, a Democrat mayor in Texas is admitting that it is an emergency situation in their city."
Yeah, it's just a continuation of this, of the White House lying. Now they're asking, mayors of big cities to lie. It's ridiculous that to this day, the Secretary of Homeland Security says the border's secure, the border's closed. So it's a continuation from day one. From day one of this crisis, as soon as Joe Biden took office, these numbers started to explode. From day one, remember, it was first of all, it was Trump's fault. Trump's dismantling the system. Then it was climate change. Remember that? Then it was seasonal. Remember that? Now the other day they're saying, well, it's because Republicans are talking about an open border. That's music to the ears of cartels. They're sending more people. They won't tell the truth to the American people. The men and women at the Border Patrol, the 20,000 men wearing uniform, ask them. They'll tell you. They're coming because of Joe Biden's policies. Ask the illegal aliens that, the Foxes down there interviewing illegal aliens every day. They'll tell you they're coming because Joe Biden invites them. But this White House refuses to tell the truth to the American people. So, asking El Paso not to declare an emergency situation, just one more in the line of continuation of lying.
We're talking to the former acting director of ICE, Tom Homan, about the horrific situation at our southern border. I think the number is around 2.5 million is what we've come up with in the last 2 years of illegal crossings. Well, in the last 21 months since Joe Biden took over. It's not those 2.5 million that I want to ask you about, Tom Homan. The number they also came out with is around 900,000 known gotaways. I don't know if enough attention is being paid to that part because the gotaways have to be the biggest threats. The ones who are turning themselves in and saying, I'm seeking asylum, and then they know they're going to be released into the interior, they're not the ones we're worried about. The ones who can't get caught and say, I'm seeking asylum, are the ones I worry about because I don't know what they're doing here. I don't know what they're bringing in. That part of the story is not being told.
Well, the number actually just hit over 1 million last week.
Okay.
They've got over 1 million gotaways, known gotaways, since Joe Biden became president. Now, think about that. These are people that came across the border, were not arrested, were not vetted. And these are recorded, which means they're caught on video, they're caught on camera traffic, they're caught on drone traffic or sensor traffic. So then these are people Border Patrol couldn't respond to because they're so overwhelmed. They're in facilities processing these family groups. So we've got over 1 million gotaways. Now think about this for a moment. They've arrested 81 known suspected terrorists off the FBI screening database. 81. Now, if they arrested 81, how many of that 1 million that didn't want to get arrested, that wanted to get away, how many of them are known suspected terrorists? Because Border Patrol's arrested people from 160 different countries. Some of these countries are sponsors of terrorism.
That's right.
They've arrested 81. So if you don't think a single one of that over 1 million people that come across that country and invaded law enforcement, didn't come to a country to sponsor terrorism, and didn't come here to do us harm, then you're ignoring the data. I'm just going by chances and percentages. I don't know how many terrorists got away. But I'll tell you this, someday this country's going to find out, and it's going to be a bad day for this country.
Well, and that's the unknown. You're exactly right. We don't know how many of the terrorists are among those 1 million gotaways. We also don't know how many of them are the drug runners and the cartel members who are bringing these lethal amounts of fentanyl across the border as well. Again, the ones who are just coming here and trying to, quote unquote, escape the poverty of their own country, they don't mind being apprehended because they know they're going to be set free and then told to come back later, the catch and release program. But the ones that are carrying the drugs, the ones that are carrying the weapons, the ones that are trafficking the human beings as well, those are the gotaways. Don't know how many, as you pointed out, but that's kind of the terrifying aspect of it. We have no earthly idea how many criminals are actually making it through.
Well, it's common sense, right? The same 2 years you've had historic illegal immigration. You have historic drug flow into the United States that's killing a historic number of Americans. And that's why I say all the time, they keep attacking President Trump and even me as the Trump administration that we were inhumane, we were cruel. Let me tell you something. When we had illegal immigration down 83%, when we had illegal immigration at a 40-year low, how many women weren't being sexually assaulted by the cartels? How many children weren't drowning in the river? How many Americans weren't dying of drug overdoses? How many millions of dollars were the cartels not making every day? President Trump, how many known suspected terrorists weren't coming across that border? President Trump's policies gave us the most secure border in my lifetime, and it saved lives. Since Joe Biden became president, we have over 100,000 Americans dying from drug overdoses. You got over 1,300 migrants have died on U.S. soil since he's been in the White House, which is a record by far. President Biden's policies are killing people. President Trump's policies save lives. A secure border saves lives.
Tom Homan, former acting director of ICE, joining us talking about this southern border. Last thing for you on this, Tom. There was a allegation, I guess is what we'll call it, that was made a couple of days ago that the Secretary of State, Tony Blinken, has recommended, and this is from the President of Mexico. He alleged that Blinken proposed a North American alliance, a North American union, essentially erasing the southern border, erasing the northern border, and allowing Canada, the United States, and Mexico to all operate essentially like the EU does. Can you talk about what that would do to national security for the American people if this were to come through?
Well, look, you can't have national security without border security. It's impossible. We have to control and know what's coming into this country and who's coming in this country. I mean, President Reagan said it for best, right? He said you're not a country if you don't have borders. Mm-hmm. And look, we've proven that. I worked for 6 presidents, starting with Ronald Reagan. Every president I worked for, even Clinton, Obama, they took some actions to try to secure the border. Some did more than others, of course. No one did more than President Trump. But President Biden is the first president in the history of this nation who came into office and unsecured a border. Who the hell does that? I mean, what president says, I want more illegal immigration. I want more illegal drug flow. I want more overdose deaths. I want more no-suspect terrorists coming across the border. Our border is so important to our national security. And it's just not the border, it's the airports too. So it'd be devastating. It'd be a national security risk of huge proportions.
It's just a shocking thing to hear the American Secretary of State propose erasing literally the sovereignty and the borders of this country by forming a North American Union. Tom Homan, I know you're fighting very hard to protect people and to protect our border. Thank you very much, my friend. That's Tom Homan, former acting director of ICE, 16 minutes before the top of the hour. We've got one more segment for your phone calls on the Hugh Hewitt Show. Bob France sitting in, and we're back soon.
Hey everybody, Dwayne Patterson of the Hugh Hewitt Show, and yesterday was weigh-in day, my weekly call with Rachel at myphdweightloss.com. That is the extraordinary people that have helped me lose 41 pounds in just about 9 weeks since I started the myphdweightloss.com diet. Rachel got the news as I stepped on the scale and hit 199.1 pounds. I broke the 200-pound barrier for the first time since Whistler was a pup. You too can lose a bunch of weight if you really want to in a fairly short period of time. I mean, keep in mind, it's in the middle of October. You could lose up to 30, 35 pounds between now and the end of the year and the holidays. Wouldn't that make you feel a whole lot better? Give the myphdweightloss.com team a call at 864-644-1900. That's 864-644-1900. The food's good. The team is great. Call today, 864-644-1900.
Don't go anywhere. Bob France will be right back. I do want to remind you about andrewandtodd.com, my faithful friends. 888-888-1172. All over this country, wherever I go, people are talking about real estate prices having soared during the pandemic, and now interest rates are soaring under Joe Biden. And the answer is, should we buy a house? I always tell them yes. It's going to get worse before it gets better. And when those interest rates come down under a Republican president in the far off, maybe 3 years from now, maybe 4 years from now, refinance then. But in the meantime, every day that you wait, interest rates go up. They crossed the 4% on the 10-year Treasury bond last week, which means higher than 7% in the case of most people making a purchase value loan. You can refi, of course. You can also do a reverse mortgage if you're a senior citizen and you're not making your bills. Whatever it is you do it with andrewandtodd.com. Two great Christian men that I've known for very long. I was in a Bible study with Andrew for 20 years. andrewandtodd.com, andrewandtodd.com. andrewandtodd.com. And then don't forget, you got it right here, relieffactor.com, wherever I am, whatever city I am, whether I'm stopping at an airport in between cities. I've been everywhere, man, in the last week, and I continue to do that. Relieffactor.com goes with me, and I take it with me joyfully, gladfully, and I take it every morning. I put it in my dock kick when I travel so I don't forget when I shave. Take the relieffactor.com. You'll feel a lot better by the end of the day when you do. ReliefFactor.com is still $19.95. $19.95. What a deal. But you got to take it to enjoy it. ReliefFactor.com helps the body's natural anti-inflammatory properties function better. Every doctor I've said says Icarian, curcumin, resveratrol, and omega ought to be in your diet. Well, do it the easy way. Do it with the very, very easy to take ReliefFactor.com. They go down well with cold coffee. I take it every morning. ReliefFactor.com. Come right back for more Bob France after this.
Portions of the Hugh Hewitt Show are brought to you by Alliance Defending Freedom.
Welcome back, Patriots. 9 minutes before the top of the hour. Bob France sitting in for Hugh Hewitt just for a few minutes longer. He was, of course, on the road doing the Battleground Talkers Tour around the country. He's doing Pittsburgh. He's got Columbus coming up. He's got my hometown of Cleveland, which is where I am right now. If you're interested in what you're hearing from me and you would like to hear more, my program airs right after Hughes in Cleveland. And if you would like to listen to it wherever you may be around the country, you, of course, can stream it at WHKRadio.com, WHKRadio.com, 9 to noon every day Eastern time. And I would certainly love to have more people listening from more places. So welcome. I want to get a couple of more phone calls in here before the top of the hour, but I also have another piece of audio that you need to hear. We've been talking about battleground Senate races in Ohio and Pennsylvania. We've been talking about Arizona or Colorado. We've been talking about the governor's race in Arizona. We've been talking about Georgia. I haven't talked about North Carolina yet. You need to hear this. This is important in North Carolina because this is what Sherry Beasley, Senate candidate, believes. You're going to hear in a second. But again, these people are running in a state, but they will cast votes that affect everyone in the country. And if you're concerned about your children, and if you're concerned about the movement that is afoot to try to get them to change themselves permanently and forever, and we're talking about through puberty blockers and radical reconstructive gender-affirming surgeries, you should know before these people take a seat in the United States Senate. So North Carolina voters in particular, but everyone listen to Cut 17.
We know Republicans, of course, here in North Carolina, continue to launch attacks against trans people, including limiting the ability of trans youth to have gender-affirming surgeries. There's just something deeply troubling about that. We know that the state health care plan does not provide for trans-affirming care. This, frankly, is really a very dangerous time. Transgender adults are 2 times as likely than cisgender adults to be diagnosed by depressive disorders. Transgender adults are significantly less likely to get their flu shots or go to doctor's appointments. We know that half of transgender adults report experiencing some kind of physical assault or sexual assault. That's deeply difficult and dangerous. And so we really must call out violence and stigmas for transgender women, particularly Black transgender women. And we absolutely must say her name. We must, of course, pass the Equality Act to protect transgender people from discrimination, and we must expand the ACA and Medicaid and Medicare and TRICARE for affirming protections for trans people, transgender people.
Okay, let's stop it there. Let's stop it there just in the interest of time. What you're hearing is a would-be United States Senator telling you that your tax dollars should go to surgically mutilate children. Transgender youth, as she calls them. Children. Confused children or children who have been indoctrinated, they have been recruited, they have been groomed, they have been coerced into finding another reality other than reality, to find another identity, because this is what is being pushed now by a very, very radical and dangerous party. It's one thing to push that, it's another thing to push that and then tell you, the American taxpayer, you should be paying for this. We should be expanding Medicaid. We should be expanding federal assistance to get gender-affirming surgeries, otherwise known as physical mutilations of confused kids. I'm just going to make this as plain as it can be. And I've said this in Ohio many, many times, but I want to say this to everybody. If I take a dog into a doctor's office and ask him to surgically remove the dog's legs and replace those dog's legs with fins, do we now have a fish? Or do we have a surgically mutilated dog? Because that is exactly what is being done to these young kids. That if you cut off their breasts, their growing breasts, if you block them from developing normally, hormonally, if you cut off their genitalia and fashion some sort of rudimentary plastic surgery invention and try to say now this is a girl, this is a boy who was a boy who is now a girl, and a girl is no, not any more than that dog is now a fish. It is still a boy. It is still a girl. And Pastor Mark Robinson, the Lieutenant Governor of the state of North Carolina, is right when he says,
ain't but two genders, ain't nothing but men and women.
And acknowledging that fact is not being discriminatory against trans kids or trans people. It is acknowledging reality and trying to tell people that if we don't trust children to be able to make informed decisions on signing contracts until they're 18, if we don't trust children to make informed decisions on how to handle a gun until they're 18, if we don't trust them on how to whether or not it's good enough for their health to smoke until they're 21, if we don't allow them to drink alcohol because of what it can do to their bodies until they're 21, then how on earth can we tell an 8-year-old it's okay to start physically mutilating your body based on a temporary psychological condition? It's insanity. We're trying to look out for these kids, not harm them. We're the ones trying to save them. If you take anything away from the conversation I've had with you today, take that away. Thank you so much for letting me be a part of the show, Hugh Hewitt. Thank you, Hugh Hewitt team, for the wonderful assistance. You guys are amazing. And thanks to you for listening. I appreciate it. We'll talk to you next time here on the Salem Radio Network.